Here is moderately successful podcaster. I'm just trolling. Chamath Balhapatia with some thoughts on Elon Musk.
I think the person that embodies taste the most in our modern world is Elon. If you look at the things that he makes, he has found this incredibly unique intersection of the things he makes are good and the things he makes are useful.
Absolutely nailed it. Leftards have left the chat. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that in most cases, Musk-led companies don't just produce things that are both good and useful, but the best and the most useful. If I were to guess, and that's all it is, a guess, I think it's probably reasonably likely that Elon Musk's entire life philosophy is to be maximally useful. And there's actually an enormous amount of overlap between useful and good. Something that's useful by definition is something that's capable of being put to a practical, beneficial, or effective use. Might help you accomplish a specific goal, serves a practical purpose, or delivers a tangible benefit. All things that sound pretty good to me. I would hate to offend anybody. Hard to say that with a straight face. But I have a theory. Are you ready? And by theory, I mean an accurate observation of reality. Infallible, in fact. If you would have flipped this and replaced good and useful with bad and useless, the intersection would not be products produced by Elon Musk's companies, but how Elon Musk's most vocal haters feel about themselves. Although, in fairness, this applies not just to Musk's haters, but haters of anyone and anything in general.
That is like the unicorn of tech. That's very rare. The only other person that's come even close to that is Steve Jobs. I'm sure there are other people that have found the intersection of good and useful. You know, I aspire to make things that are good and useful. I don't think I have necessarily, but I aspire to do it. But he has done it multiple times.
Things that are very good and very useful can also cause an enormous amount of disruption along the way. Musk reposting this from Citadel CEO Ken Griffon.
Let me just, share a few thoughts with you on this. Number one is, in the last few months, there has been a step change function in the productivity of the AI toolkit. It is profoundly more powerful than it was just 9 months ago.
Which to me sounds very good and very useful. And again, I continue to repeat, if you are not using AI every day, your personal and professional life, you are fucking up monumentally. And if you can't think of any ways that AI might be useful in your personal or professional life, pro tip, ask an AI for some tips.
And for us at Citadel, that has allowed us to unleash a much broader array of use cases for AI. And it has been really interesting to watch, to be blunt, work that we would usually do with people with masters and PhDs in finance over the course of weeks or months being done by AI agents over the course of hours or days. So these are not mid-tier white collar jobs. These are like extraordinarily high skilled jobs being, I'm going to pick a word, being automated by agentic AI. And I got to tell you, I went home one Friday actually fairly depressed by this, because you could just see how this was going to have such a dramatic impact on society. And when you witness it in your own four walls, when you see work that used to be man-years of work being done in days or weeks, it's like, wow, that's the first time I've seen real impact in our four walls.
And you can count on a lot of additional real impact in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. So here's my effort at being good and useful. A warning: use AI in your personal and professional daily lives, and consider what you will do, especially when it comes to meaning and purpose, when AI is able to do what you do professionally faster and better than you can. While we're on the subject of good and useful, or in this case, the best and the most useful, these numbers speak for themselves. We are looking at 2026 year-to-date mass to orbit. The entire world, excluding SpaceX in grey and SpaceX in blue. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. SpaceX accounting for 86.7% of all mass to orbit this year so far. One company. Of course, this type of technological dominance would never happen in any other domains, especially not general autonomy. So we're definitely not likely to see this play out in the future as Tesla scales up their fleet of currently under production dedicated Cybercab Robotaxis. So I don't even know why I would mention that. So pretend I didn't say anything about Tesla or their totally not inevitable future domination of autonomy. Let's get back to SpaceX.
We're always going to have a big weight because we believe this is perhaps one of the best companies and opportunities out there for our investors. And the way we see it is that it's going to be a conglomerate. It's going to be like going back to the days of Rockefeller and Carnegie when they owned the whole supply chain and the competitors had to use their supply chain. So when you convert your biggest competitor to your biggest customer, that is a company that's going to outpace any competition. We see this as the leader in the future. We don't see any other space company competing with them in a significant way. So we have a very high conviction for the long term for this company.
So the reference to your biggest competitor becoming your biggest customer would be Anthropic, the recent deal announced with access to Colossus One. Anthropic, a direct competitor to SpaceX AI's range of AI products, announcing an agreement to partner to license exclusive access to SpaceX AI's last generation AI training supercluster, Colossus One. We don't know the dollar amounts involved, but presumably billions of dollars per year. Not just that, but they also publicly announced the potential of working together, collaborating for orbital AI compute. A very clear indication that SpaceX AI had something both good and extremely useful to Anthropic. To the broader point about SpaceX AI developing infrastructure the rest of the world will want to use, absolutely on point. Orbital data centers, you want to do that? Great. How are you going to do that? You obviously need to manufacture the satellites, and then you also need to do this thing called putting them into orbit. At a very minimum, you're going to need many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or more likely, call it 1 million satellites. And if you need to launch the better part of 1 million satellites, which launch provider might you, out of necessity, need to use? Anyone have any ideas who might have the capacity, which is continuing to scale rapidly, to actually do such a thing?
Is he going to roll Tesla up into SpaceX? Is that something SpaceX investors should be prepared for?
Good question.
Very good question. Well, we've seen everything, right? We saw the Cursor deal recently. Yesterday, we got news about the SpaceX AI. So everything is possible. But the way so far, we have 3 engines. We have Core, SpaceX, which is responsible for 90% of all mass to orbit. That's 90%, not just the US number, it's 90% of the global mass to orbit. And then you have the very cost efficient way, actually, because you went from having in the shuttle era when they ran with $54,000 per kilogram. Now Falcon 9 it costs $2,000 to $3,000 per kilogram, and the goal is with Starship to reach about $100 per kilogram. So this is going to be the most cost efficient, by far the most effective rocket operator. Then you have the second engine right now, which is Starlink, and competes against the most bureaucratic industry, the telecom industry. We're speaking about 10 million subscribers in just 6 years. Margins of about 60%. That's again unprecedented. It's 2 to 3 times the telecom industry, and there's no issues with cables. We saw on the Baltic Sea, what happened with about 7 times cables got cut. So Starlink has leapfrogged the telecom industry, just like mobile did with the landlines. And then you have obviously the AI part, SpaceX AI now, which is going to be, we believe, the leader in AI. And the reason is, when it comes to AI, LLMs are so easy to replicate, and the real moat is the infrastructure. So once you own the infrastructure around it, and with a goal to have AI data centers up in the space, then you have the whole infrastructure. You can compete with any other company, AI company, and actually the other AI companies are going to have to use your infrastructure to compete with you.
Completely agree. Nice to hear somebody actually saying what I've been saying now for some time. It's the pieces of the puzzle are starting to fall into place. It's extremely obvious to me that AI companies globally will need, not choose or want or decide, need to use infrastructure, orbital AI compute, placed into orbit by SpaceX. It's a massive bottleneck, which is AI compute. Major constraints on Earth, not so in space. My prediction is that near infinite amounts of capital will be thrown in the direction of SpaceX AI to contribute to their build-out of orbital AI data centers, and AI companies will be lined up with multi-billion, multi-deca-billion-dollar contracts to license access to what I continue to call Starthink. As for the question that was asked and impressively dodged, I mean, that was some Neo in the Matrix type stuff there. Will Tesla and SpaceX merge? The answer to that, how could they possibly not? Seems to me like it's only a matter of time. Want more content? Early access? A bunch of perks? Click the links in the pinned comment. AG1 has been part of my daily health protocol for almost half a decade. It's packed full of vitamins and minerals and helps me fill in nutritional gaps while supporting energy, digestion, and immune function. It also has prebiotics and probiotics to promote gut health. I take my health very seriously, and so should you. Try AG1 today by visiting drinkag1.com/SMR or click the link in the pinned comment and enjoy a free welcome kit with vitamin D3 plus K2 and AG1 travel packs. That's drinkag1.com/SMR.